ship, so
Yeah,
actually
yeah. I
when
would say
Randy.
Randy comes up, then you.
Sounds good. I can do that. Okay. So when I was 1 year old, my sister was born. The next year, my brother was born. Another year later, another brother was born. My mom said that when she brought my sister home from the hospital, I just started crying, and I pretty much didn't stop crying for the next 5 years. Anytime she would take me to the babysitter, I would just cry. No one had the emotional energy to deal with how sensitive I was. I was a super sensitive child. I remember one time in first grade, I had caught a little grasshopper at recess, and I was super excited, and I was going to bring it to show my teacher, and we were standing in line when the bell rang, and the grasshopper jumped out of my hands, and someone stepped on it and squished it, and I cried so hard. My mom had to come and pick me up from school. I was just inconsolable. And that's just kind of how I was in regards to everything, and I've heard that as alcoholics, we tend to be very, very sensitive, and I was definitely on the scale of very highly sensitive. But like I said, no one really had the emotional energy to deal with me and my sensitivities, so I slowly just kind of started to shut down because it hurt too much to feel as much as I was feeling, and there was no consolation for that. So the older I got, the more I just kind of shut down emotionally and just chose to deaden that. I chose instead to become the perfect child. The way that I got attention in my family was getting straight A's and being mommy's little helper, so I would do super good in school, and I would come home and I would help out with all the brothers and sisters and change the diapers and be the perfect daughter, and that was the way that I received attention. One time I brought home a B plus from school, and that's all they talked about at dinner. How could you get a B plus? What's wrong with you? How and I had really tried my best. That was my best, but it wasn't good enough. So I just, like I said, started to shut down. When I was like 10, this is another like sensitivity story, but when I was 10, my uncle had a pig, and that pig was like my best little friend. And then he ended up slaughtering it, and they had it for a luau for dinner, and it destroyed me. I became a vegetarian that night, and I haven't had meat since. It was too much for my little heart. I just couldn't take it. I don't know. Like I said, I was just super sensitive. But as I got older, I was able to like kind of shut down and just keep things in check, and I didn't let my emotions control me anymore. I just kind of went on autopilot and just lived life as best as I could. I never really fit in with my family, number one, because they were all super religious. I didn't really fit in with anyone at school. I was kind of a loner, kind of a weirdo. Like I said, I grew up in Seattle, so we had there was big woods behind my house, and that was my favorite thing to do, is just go outside and just go deep in the woods and just be, I loved the animals and the trees and the birds, and that's where I felt most at peace. And I still do, honestly, to this day. That's, I'll get into that later, but that is my higher power, is nature. But I felt that connection even as a little kid, and so when I was, I think, 5th or 6th grade, then my mom had another baby. This one she was born 2 months premature, and that was extremely expensive. And my parents, being very religious but also very egotistical, refused to have any help from the state. They wanted to just cover all the expenses themselves. They refused to get any sort of financial assistance or welfare or food stamps or anything. Because of those choices, we a lot of times went hungry. We were very, very poor. At that point, she was number 8. So there were 8 kids and my 2 parents. My dad had hurt his back at work a few months prior, so he wasn't working. My mom had just had a baby. She couldn't work, so there was literally no income coming in, and there was no food in the house. They did get a little bit of help from the Mormon church, but as my mom explained later in life, they were too proud to ask for as much food as they needed for such a large family. They were embarrassed that they weren't able to support all of us, so they just got the very bare minimum amount of food. And so a lot of times we would run out of food like 2 and 3 days before the new shipment would come in. So there were nights where I literally went to bed hungry. And as a child, I didn't understand, and especially with how religious they were. We'd pray, morning, noon, and night before every meal. We'd have family prayers in the evenings, and they would just, pray, to God that we would have enough money and enough food, and none of those things ever happened. And it didn't make sense to me because I was a kid and I wasn't doing anything wrong, and I didn't understand why God wasn't answering my prayers and why I had to go to bed hungry at night. It didn't make sense. And along with my super sensitivity, like nothing was adding up in my world. I just didn't understand. So I started really questioning God from a very young age. I didn't understand how people could say that he answered their prayers when all I wanted was something to eat and he couldn't even provide that for me. So I really, really questioned. And I even remember talking to my mom once, and I said, I don't believe in God. I think that, it's kind of like the emperor's new clothes, like everyone at church says that they believe in God and says that they feel the Holy Spirit, but I don't think anybody does. I think everyone's just saying that so no one else will know that they're not really feeling anything either, and my mom just kind of brushed it off and said, no, we do feel it and God does answer our prayers, but to me, I had seen no proof of it ever in my life. So when I was in middle school, just starting 8th grade, my parents decided that the only way that they were going to get out of debt was to sell their house and to move somewhere else because they had all the medical bills from my sister, and they had another baby after that, my youngest brother. So they were just drowning financially. So they sold their house in Seattle, and we moved to New Mexico. And that's where I lived for the next 20 years or so. But in 8th grade, as already an awkward, weird teenager and a weird kid who didn't have any friends, moving from Seattle to the most rural, small town place in New Mexico, I 100% did not fit in. At that time it was early 90s, so I was listening to Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and these people were wearing cowboy boots and listening to Garth Brooks and, George Strait and all that, and I was just this weird outsider who didn't fit in. And it was a very small Mormon community, which is part of the reason that they chose to move there. But everyone who lived there had lived there their whole lives, and their parents before that, and their parents before that. So it was a very tight-knit community, and outsiders, even though we were Mormon, weren't fully accepted just because we were new, and I was weird. So I had kind of a hard time making friends. A couple of the girls kind of tried to befriend me, but I just, it was just a very awkward age. So going into high school, I still didn't really fit in with the church girls, and I didn't really fit in anywhere, but I kind of found a group of kids who partied a lot, and so I kind of started hanging out with them, and I would sneak and smoke cigarettes, and I kind of found a group that I could fit in with a little bit, and they didn't care that I was as weird. So I started sneaking out of my house and partying every night. Not every night. I guess during the summertime, it was at least a few times a week. So I did that for a full summer, and I finally felt like I had a group of friends that I fit in with. And then one night, sorry, it's gonna get heavy. So then one night I was at a party. And I got super drunk, and I got raped by my ex-boyfriend from high school. We had never slept together. I was a virgin, but I was drunk and passed out at the party, and he raped me and then sent 2 of his friends in after. I was too drunk to do anything about it. I couldn't move. I begged them to stop. They didn't. So I just had to lay there until they were done, and then one of them took me home after. So everyone in high school found out, and if I wasn't an outsider before, I certainly was now. A couple of the girls who had been at the party told me not to say anything, so they were going to kick my ass if I told anybody. So of course, I just denied it. I said, I don't remember. I don't think anything happened. The school found out. I had to go and talk to the vice principal. My parents found out. The church found out. My mom, several days later, took me to the emergency room, and I had to go through the whole rape kit process, which is an absolute nightmare. But she said that if I wasn't pregnant, then she would take that as God's sign that it never happened. That was her way of dealing with it. And that was just kind of another slap in the face as far as God was concerned to me. But the church found out. They excommunicated me. They didn't feel that I should have anything to do with their daughters, that I was going to be a bad influence on everyone, and that I was, that I was giving the church a bad name. So I was excommunicated. My parents sent me to Utah to live with my grandma, and then I had to go to treatment in Utah, which was another disaster. Pretty much I just felt completely isolated and alone, and all I wanted to do from that point on is just drink. That was the only escape that I had. When I was drinking, that was the only time that I felt okay in my own skin. It was the only relief that I ever had. So when I moved back from New Mexico about 6 months later, I dropped out of high school, and I got a job waiting tables at a restaurant, and that's where I met my future husband, my daughter's dad. I was 16, he was 32. He didn't care if I drank and smoked weed, and we just hung out and partied together, and he had his own place. I ended up moving in with him a few months later. My parents just didn't know what to do with me, and I wanted to drink and party and not see anybody or deal with anybody who had been any part of my high school or anything like that. I didn't want anything to do with anybody. I just wanted to start over. So we got together, and I mean, it was pretty good. We got along really well at first. And then when I was 17 and living there, he got busted for selling weed to high school kids. And he blamed me because he was at work when the cops showed up at the door, and I let them in because I didn't know any better, because I was super naive and I'd never even been pulled over before. So the cops knocked on the door and they're like, "We need to come in," and I was like, okay. Showed him right where the weed was, and it was not not cool. I think he still holds it against me to this day, honestly. But after that, I had to move back home for a little while, and then as soon as I turned 18, I moved back in with him, and he had to do some jail time. I think that for me, I just had to spend the weekend in juvie, and then they credit it time served, and they let me off pretty easy, but he had to do some jail time. But I was drinking every night with him. We would drink, we'd smoke weed, smoke cigarettes, and let's see. So then when I was 18, he was in jail. He was on work release though, and I was living in our apartment. And I had gotten off work really late one night. I was working at a pizza place, and I had to work first thing in the morning. So I went to the grocery store after work. I was just getting cereal and milk for the morning. And as I was walking back out to my car, it was like 11:30 at night. As I was getting into my car, someone came in to the side of me and held a knife to my throat, and kidnapped me and took me to a remote wooded area and raped me for several hours before he let me go. Super traumatic event in my life. As it was happening, I just remember saying in my head, "You know what, God? F you. This is the last straw. I've had enough." I was literally doing nothing wrong. I wasn't partying. I wasn't drinking. Not that that would make it okay anyways, but I was literally doing nothing wrong. And this happened. And I didn't even know if I was going to survive that night. I didn't know if he was going to kill me, but I didn't even want to ask God's help. I was just absolutely done. I consciously closed the door on any sort of contact and spirituality for the next probably 18, 19 years of my life. I said absolutely not. I didn't need him before. I didn't need him, I don't need him now. Literally, he's done nothing for me. So that started a very, very dark period in my life. We ended up finding the guy. We went to court. He got sentenced to 17 years in prison. It turns out that he had very heavy gang affiliations in the area where I was from. So no one wanted to be in court with me. My parents said that they were too busy working. They couldn't show up. And then the guy's mom and sister threatened me afterwards. it was a very like scary situation. And by that time, I'd already had my daughter. I'd had Ty. So I was, you know, a brand new mom. She was like 8 or 9 months old, and these people were threatening me. I was getting followed home. It was really terrifying. So we decided to move to El Paso, Texas, and just get away and just kind of start over. So that's what we did. But her dad is a heroin addict, and he had been clean the whole time that we'd been together. But El Paso is where he's from, and that's where he knew. I mean, it was just such a trigger for him being back there that he couldn't stay clean for even a day or two. So we really struggled down there. I was in such a horrible state of depression. I couldn't even leave the house. I was terrified. I was scared of every little noise. I pretty much locked myself in the house for close to a year. And he would work, but he was also using super heavy. And it was a very dark period in my life. I finally got up the courage to get a job. I ended up getting a job cocktail waitressing because that was what was going to make the most money. And I knew that I couldn't stay married to him anymore because he wasn't willing to get clean, and I just couldn't live like that anymore. So I got a job cocktail waitressing. Then I got a second job bartending. So I was working 2 jobs. I wasn't even 21 yet, actually, then. I was only 20. But I was working to save money to get my own place. I was drinking a lot, you know, doing shots at work. No one cared that I was underage. And I ended up moving out and getting my own place. We split up, and that's when I met Sky's dad. I met him while I was bartending, and I pretty much jumped from the frying pan to the fire, as they say. He wasn't into heroin, but he did meth, and he drank as much as I did, and he was big, and he was mean, and he was scary. But I felt safe with him because he kind of protected me from Ty's dad, because Ty's dad was kind of, our relationship was very rocky, and he was quite manipulative. So I felt like this big dude was going to keep me safe from this other dude, but it turns out this dude was even worse than this dude. And I got pregnant with Sky after we had only been together for a month or 2, and he got super, super abusive with me very quickly. So I had to leave, and I had to move back to New Mexico to my mom's house. I had a 2-year-old and pregnant with another baby, and I had no idea what I was doing with my life. But I didn't drink when I was pregnant, and that's one thing that I am super proud of. You know, I always like to think that I put my kids first. That didn't always manifest as well as I wanted it to, especially when they were older, but I really, really tried. Those babies saved my life, both of them, more than once. So moving on, I mean, I had a series of, you know, ridiculous, frustrating relationships, you know. I picked people who drank as much as I did and who lived the same kind of lifestyle as I did because I didn't want anyone to judge me. And, you know, if they're doing the same thing as I am, they can't really judge, you know. So I would date the alcoholics that I met at the bar, you know, and it just led to just a series of more abandonment and heartbreak and frustration and, you know, loss of property and, you know, all these different just crazy, crazy situations. Meanwhile, you know, I was just drinking like a fish. When I would try to control my drinking, I would not drink hard alcohol and only drink beer. That was my solution. So it started out as just like a 6-pack a night, you know, but this disease is very progressive. So a 6-pack wasn't enough, you know, and then I would move to an 8-pack of the tall boys and then a 12-pack, you know, and it consistently progressed. When I did drink hard alcohol, that's when life got really, really out of control really fast. So I definitely tried to keep that in check as often as possible. You know, I got married 2 more times and divorced 2 more times by the time I was 29, you know. I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to function. I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to have a healthy relationship. I didn't know how to be healthy myself. I struggled with severe anorexia, bulimia, body disorder. You know, at one point I got down to like 105 pounds. I'm 140 now, so that's 35 pounds less than I am now. I mean, I was just a walking skeleton. But I still drank. I mean, that was the one thing that I had that made me feel okay. As sick and twisted and disgusting as that is, that's the one thing that I held on to for 17 years. I didn't know how to function without it. And I would do things, I guess, especially, kind of towards the end. My kids they didn't know me sober. I was an everyday drinker. I was an all-day drinker, binge drinker, blackout drinker. There was no restraint. It was all or nothing. And towards the end, my kids were really, really getting sick of it. They really wanted me to stop drinking, and I didn't know how. I would feel such shame and regret for how much I drank and how I acted when I was drunk, but I would wake up the next morning and take a drink again to feel okay, to try to cover up that shame and that hurt. And that was a vicious, vicious cycle that went on for years and years and years. Towards the end, when I would try to do things or add more things into my life to help me stop drinking as much. I started taking college classes in the hopes that having something to do would distract from the drinking, or knowing that I had to wake up in the morning for class, then I wouldn't drink as much the night before. Knowing that I had to do homework, maybe that could delay my drinking a little bit. And that only lasted for a couple of weeks, and I was just, now I was just a college student who drank a shitload and never got stuff done. You know what I mean? It didn't actually solve the problem. It added more stress and more frustration, which caused me to drink even more. Man, sorry. I've never actually said all this stuff out loud in like one big chunk before, so it's kind of a lot. When I finally decided to stop drinking, it was because I was forced to stop drinking. I had gotten a DWI on my way to poetry class. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I blew a .32. 1/3 of my blood was alcohol. They couldn't believe that I wasn't dead or in a coma, but I honestly wasn't even blacked out. Like, I was completely fine. This was my normal, like, pace. This was how I drank every day, and it had just gotten to the point where there was never not alcohol in my blood. I would wake up in the morning just so shaky and sick that I would do a shot and throw it right back up, and then take another shot and just try to hold it in for at least 15 or 20 seconds to just like try to let some of the alcohol soak in, and then I would throw it right back up again. And it took a lot of times 3 or 4 shots before it would finally stay in my system, and I could, stop shaking enough to do another shot. And that's how I started my day. I don't know. I don't know how I lived like that for so long. So I got my DWI in March, but I didn't actually quit drinking until August. I was facing some serious jail time because of the insanity of my DWI. They found open containers under my seat, reckless endangerment, with such a, I can't even remember all the wording, but it was a lot, and it was super serious. So I had to do outpatient treatment. I got an interlock in my car. I did all the necessary steps, and my lawyer postponed my court date for over a year so that I could show that I had this much completed to show that I had good faith that I had quit drinking and that this was a one-time thing. So when I quit drinking on August 7th, I knew that no matter what, I had to quit drinking because I was going to lose my kids, I was going to lose my house, my car. I didn't have a job at that time, but I was on the verge of losing absolutely everything. This was a one-shot deal. I did not have the luxury of a relapse. So I quit drinking. I went to outpatient treatment. They required that I go to one AA meeting a week, so that's what I did. I white-knuckled it for a long, long time, and my life did get better. I was able to get a job back. My kids started trusting me. It definitely took a while to earn their trust back. They would constantly check my bags and make sure that there were no empty alcohol containers. I remember one time I brought home a paper bag full of tomatoes that someone had given me, and the girls freaked out. They thought it was a paper bag full of alcohol. But slowly I earned their trust back, and I was able to start getting my life back, a life that I didn't even know that I could have. About 18 months in, I became very restless, irritable, and discontent in my sobriety. I hadn't worked the steps. I didn't have a sponsor. I was only going to one meeting a week, and I had completed my outpatient therapy. But there was still something missing. There was something big missing. I had checked all the boxes. I had everything back that I had lost, but I was still miserable inside. That old feeling had crept back in. I did not feel comfortable in my own skin, and I didn't know what to do about it. So luckily I had a great group in New Mexico, and I had been going to the meetings once a week on Sundays. And they suggested to me, go to 90 meetings in 90 days, get a sponsor, and work the steps. And I was very hesitant and very resistant because I saw the God word. And I was like, there's got to be some other way. There's got to be something else I can do. Don't make me mess with the God stuff, because I'm not into that. But it took me getting uncomfortable enough and knowing that I was going to go back out and drink and lose everything before I was willing to listen and follow the steps. And so that's what I did. So I got a sponsor, and she fast-tracked me through the steps. She knew that it was a do-or-die situation. Like, I was on the verge of going out drinking. I could not, I just felt so itchy all the time, and I couldn't handle my emotions, and I couldn't handle stress and life, and I just wanted to sleep all the time. The depression was a huge part of this. I was just miserable. So she fast-tracked me through the steps. The first one was simple. The first step came to admit that I was powerless over alcohol, that my life was unmanageable. That one was easy. I mean, just taking a look back at the last, several years of my life, that one was very clear. But when it came to turning my will and my life over to a higher power, that one was really, really hard for me. I struggled with that one for a minute. I had felt so abandoned by God for my whole entire life. I had never felt loved or cared for or taken care of or anything. And so how am I supposed to come into this program and then just say, okay, God, I'm here now. Now you can take care of me. Why is he going to take care of me now when he wouldn't take care of me when I was a little kid and really hadn't done anything wrong? Now, 30 years later, I'm a total shit show, and I have all these marks on my record. Why is he going to take care of me now? So it was really, really hard for me. But I had a really great sponsor, and she had told me that it's a God of my understanding. It's not a Christian God. It's not Jesus. It's not the God of my childhood. It's a God of my understanding. So I really had to unpack and undo everything that I had learned from a child and rebuild my own meaning of what my own higher power was. And it did. It took a while. I mean, one guy that I knew, he called his God Frank, and he talked to him like a friend. Another guy said his God was a light switch, and that made no sense to me. I didn't get it. He was like something about the electricity, and you don't know where the electricity comes from, but you turn on the light switch and it's there. I mean, I guess it works, but it didn't work for me. So I just really, I tried to listen to church music. I tried to do all of these things to try to find some sort of connection with something that I didn't even know what it was, because I had literally never in my life felt it. But I was willing, and I was open, and I knew that it was the only thing that was going to save my life and was going to keep me sober. So I think just that willingness and being open was just enough to kind of crack the door to allow God back in. Because, like I said, I had slammed that door a long time ago. I had slammed it, locked it again, nailed boards across it. That God door was shut. I wanted nothing to do. So, it took some time to, pry those boards off and, unlock the locks and, just, take a little peek, And it happened. One morning, I was outside on my porch smoking a cigarette. I used to smoke 2 packs a day, which is insanity. But I was smoking a cigarette first thing in the morning, and I watched the sunrise come up over the horizon, and just the way that the light of the sun just came and like hit the plants and like slowly filtered, and then it came and it like rose up a bit more and it shone on me, and I was just overcome with this sense of love and compassion, and I mean, it just felt like home. It was an experience that I've never, ever in my life had. And I started crying. And I said, okay, I mean, if this is God, I can work with this God. And it just opened me up. And I felt at one with everything. And I instantly felt so badly for everyone that I had hurt in my life. Up until that point, it was more of an ego thing that, well, maybe they deserved it because they'd done this to me, and that's, you know, that was their karma, and from that moment, I felt so badly that I had caused pain to anyone else, and I just wanted to apologize and just make amends and to just make everything right for the people that I had harmed, because if there's this love available out there, I want to be connected with it as much as possible and as often as possible. And holding any sort of resentment or anger or hate or bitterness was going to disconnect me instantly from that. So that was the spiritual awakening that I had as a result of working the steps. I had already made some amends before that, but I went back and remade them from a much deeper place. You know, the first time I had made my amends, I was like, look, sorry, I, threatened to punch you in the face, and sorry I ruined Christmas, and, just the sorries, but not the deep amends. After I had the spiritual awakening, it was a deep amends. It was an agreement to change my behavior and to never repeat the same mistakes that I'd made before, and to say that I'm so sorry that I ever hurt you. That's a totally different level than just I'm sorry. And I think that's what it means in the steps when it says to make amends. That's what it means for me anyways. And from that moment, I have definitely been more willing and able to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. Sobriety has definitely not been easy for me. And I think that that's one thing that we learn, is that just because we get sober doesn't mean that life is just all of a sudden magic and rainbows and butterflies. We still have to live life on life's terms, and we still are going to have to deal with, loss and struggle and heartache and, issues with finances and issues with family. And, these are things that we just have to deal with, but we learn how. And this program and these rooms and dependence on a higher power definitely helps us gain the strength to work through these issues and these struggles that's called life. Everyone has things that they have to go through, and I feel like we're just so blessed in this program because we have the tools. We're given this set of spiritual tools to be able to work through them in a healthy and productive way, and to be able to help others work through things. I remember in New Mexico, I had gotten fired from a job for a stupid reason, and I went to a meeting right after, and I was so distraught and so upset. And there was a lady in the room, and thank goodness I didn't share first, but she was celebrating the anniversary of her daughter's murder 7 years before. And she was sitting there with such grace and such peace. And she was just able to eloquently express that she had forgiven the person and that she still felt she had a connection with her daughter. And, this amazing example of a woman who had such a connection. And here I was complaining, or ready to complain that I'd just gotten fired from a stupid job that I hated anyways. So this program has definitely taught me that, material things come and go, and, it's the deeper, more important, life lessons that we learn how to work through, and we learn by example of those who came before us, and I'm so grateful to that woman, because that instantly changed my perspective on everything. And then, so I moved to Prescott about 6.5 years ago, and I went to meetings still very consistently for the first 3 years that I lived here. And then I started massage therapy school, and I was working full time. So I was going to school all day, working all night, and I allowed the meetings to not take priority. But I didn't relapse. I was able to maintain somewhat of a spiritual path, just not really as connected, you know. It was a massage school that we kind of like started to learn about energy, and that kind of like really re-piqued my interest in my spirituality. And then 2 years ago, I started dating somebody. I finally felt that I was ready. I was emotionally and physically and mentally stable and secure, and I was finally ready to have a healthy relationship, and like this was the one, I was finally, after all the bullshit and all the nonsense, I was ready. So started dating this guy, and then he suddenly passed away of a heart attack. I was hanging out with him on Sunday. Monday he wasn't feeling well, and Tuesday he was gone. And I was like, God, come on, man. Like, why? The moment I found out, I knew that it was a choice point in my life. I knew that I could either jump off the deep end and just be done with everything, or I could take a really, really spiritual dive and try to figure out why this is happening. And thank God my reasoning kicked in like super quick. It was literally just a split-second decision, and I chose to dive into a very, very spiritual path and try to figure out why this was happening. The next day, I went up to Thumb Butte. That's kind of my little spiritual retreat place. And it was at nighttime, and I was just sitting on the hood of my car, and I was just crying, and I was like, you gotta help me, man. Like, I don't understand. Why did you have to leave me? And right as I said that, the most epic meteor like shot all the way across the sky. It was the most bright orange, just flaming, like unmistakable sign. And I just dropped to my knees and I just started sobbing. And I was like, okay, I guess you're okay. And I took that as a huge sign that I needed to understand on such a deeper level and accept spirituality on such a deeper level than I had been, because I had just been taking it as a very superficial, just kind of, not letting it play a part in my life. And because this happened, the last 2 years of my life, I have done a spiritual deep dive. I've gotten into meditation. I've gotten much more into New Age woo-woo. I'm a total hippie, but like crystals and astrology and tarot, and just like really trying to find my connection with this higher power that, that is supposed to bring me the peace that I need. So I needed to be willing to look for it and to find it. So I definitely started doing, I took courses on meditation, I took these astrology courses, and began hiking up Thumb Butte at least twice a week and just sitting and meditating and connecting with nature. And I have definitely found that deep, deep connection with a higher power. I found it in nature. I call it God sometimes, just for lack of a better word, but for me, it really is the sun. I definitely need something that I can look at every day and know that there is a higher purpose and a higher meaning, and that there is something out there that loves me and only wants the best for me. And I see that every day when the sun rises, this divine, life-giving energy force that is shining in on me. To me, that is my connection with God. That is my connection with a higher power. I took a personality test once that says that I'm highly neurotic. So that just means that I worry a lot and I'm easily stressed out, and that I need constant outside reminders that everything is okay. And so for me, having the sun as a physical representation of God is my it's my safety, if you will. I mean, because I know that there's something beyond the sun, like who created the sun and who created the universe. But if I get too crazy with it, if I try to think about it too much, then I don't have a connection, because then it's some weird woo-woo, like way out there that doesn't even know me. You know, if I connect with the sun every morning, and I set my alarm, and I wake up every morning as the sun rises, and I just say thank you, you know, and then I go back to sleep. But throughout the day, you know, if I'm ever feeling like funky or weird, or I just need a little like something, you know, I just look up at the sun, you know. And a lot of times lately, especially, I've just been saying, please relieve me of the bondage of self, you know. I need to move outside of myself, and if I can just help somebody else feel the same connection to the divine that I've been able to feel, you know, then everything that I've been through is worth it. And that's definitely a place that I've had to come to. And it's been really, really hard to get here. But it takes a lot of pressure, you know, for a piece of coal to become a diamond, you know, and it takes a lot of pain for someone to become gentle enough to be able to help somebody else. And I feel like that's what we do in this program, and that's what we are in this program. I feel like we've all been through so much in our own ways, but we're all helping each other out, you know. We're all just trying to walk each other home, you know. And this is such an amazing program and such an amazing group, you know. It was the support of the AA group that kept me sober for 18 months, you know. It was just relying on other people and just knowing that I had a place that I could come to where if I was having a bad day, I could share that, you know, or if I needed some support, there was someone there to support me, you know. And gradually, because of that, and because I wanted what they had, I wanted that peace and that deep sense of knowing that things were going to be okay, that I was actually able to find a higher power that works for me. And you know, if you would have told me that, you know, 15, 20 years ago, you know, that I would be standing up here talking about God, I would have laughed in your face and said that there's absolutely no way, you know. I never, ever was going to let God back into my life, you know. And this program has softened me, and it has made me become such a better person. And I'm able to be the mom that I always wanted to be. Got my little girls over there. I love them so much. You know, I was not the best mom when they were growing up. You know, the more responsible they got, the more irresponsible I got. And that wasn't fair to them. But I have been able to show through a living amends through the last 9 years that I am there for them, and I will do whatever it takes to help them out, you know, and to help them see that this, you know, that this way of life is worth living, and that it is possible to forgive past traumas and past hurts and past pains. They're, you know, they talk about resentment in here being the #1 offender, and I can attest to that 100%. You know, I was addicted to anger. I really felt that holding on to my anger was the only thing that kept me glued together for all those years. So when I had to go through the steps, and when I had to see my part in everything and forgive people, I thought, you know, if I let go of this anger, I'm just gonna fall apart. I'm just gonna blow away. There's gonna be nothing left holding me together. But I've learned through this program that there is so much more, and that it is such the easier, softer way to not live in anger, but to live in love and joy and happiness and freedom and peace. And, you know, this sobriety, this way of life is absolutely incredible. And everyone in this room is a walking miracle right now. Like, we're doing it, man. We're doing the damn thing. And I'm so proud of each and every one of us for what we are doing. And we're standing up, and we're facing our traumas, and we're facing our issues, and we're doing it together, and we're supporting each other. And I'm just so, so grateful to be a part of such an amazing group, you know. Normal people don't get this, you know. I feel sorry for, you know, my parents and my brothers and sisters. They don't have a program like this, you know. They're just kind of floating along aimlessly, you know. I get to come here and, you know, hang out with the coolest people in town, you know, and it's a way of life that I would not change for anything. I would not give up my best day drinking for my worst day sober, because this is a way of life that I fully embrace, and I am just so grateful that I've been given the opportunity to have a brand new life and to start completely over, and that's what I've been given thanks to this program. So I think I will end with that. So thank you all for listening to me. I appreciate you.
All right, let's give another big hand for our speaker tonight.